The Bengals humiliated in Minnesota. Mike Petraglia inside U.S. Bank Stadium following the worst loss in Bengals franchise history. Hard to believe that the Bengals have never lost a game the way they lost here on Sunday. 48-10 was the final score, the 38-point difference, the largest margin by a single point in franchise history, surpassing the four 37-point losses previously in Bengals history. It was as ugly as the score indicated here on Sunday afternoon. It's going to be ugly, as Zach Taylor said after this disaster on Sunday, when you turn the ball over 5 times and the Bengals were unable to create any turnovers against Minnesota. The Bengals put the ball on the ground 5 times. They lost 3 of those 5 fumbles, and Jake Browning threw a pair of interceptions, one of which was returned 87 yards by Isaiah Rodgers for the touchdown that really put the Vikings in command in this game by a score of 14-0. It was a day for Isaiah Rodgers, and certainly a day the Bengals would like to forget. Isaiah Rodgers became the first player in NFL history with 2 forced fumbles and 2 defensive touchdowns in the same game. He also returned a Noah Fant fumble when he punched the ball loose in the second quarter and ran it down the sideline for a 24-3 lead at that time. As a matter of fact, the Bengals committed 3 turnovers inside the 2-minute warning of the first half, giving the Minnesota Vikings a total of 17 points inside the final 2 minutes. Believe it or not, Bengals were down 34-3 at halftime, and it was capped off by a Will Reichard field goal of 62 yards to cap off the first half. It was ugly all around. Really, the Bengals' offense was a big part of the problem, obviously turning the ball over 5 times. The defense allowed a touchdown within the first 2 minutes of this game, committing 3 penalties on the first 2 snaps. It was really ugly all the way around. But again, the offense could not get anything going. They tried to run Chase Brown early in this game, take the crowd out of it to a degree. That didn't work at all, and you could tell Chase Brown, and talking to him at his locker after the game, was very, very frustrated, saying the Bengals lack the physicality right now to have any sort of running game. I've got to run harder. We've got to run harder as an offensive group, and we've got to be physical at the point of attack. Obviously kind of pointing the finger there, maybe indirectly, but certainly pointing the finger of blame a little bit at the offensive line. And Orlando Brown and Ted Karras, they weren't arguing with Chase Brown's point. Orlando Brown said that he left a few plays out on the field. He allowed himself to get beat for a couple of tackles for losses that he really regretted after the game. Also, Ted Karras said there really wasn't much to say. This was our worst performance of the season. Granted, it's only been 3 games, but he also admitted we haven't played well as an offense yet this year in 3 games that we've played. That's kind of concerning. Jake Brown this afternoon, he was intercepted twice, as I mentioned. He only completed 18 passes on the day before Brett Rippon came in midway through the 4th quarter and took over. Jake Browning after the game said, look, we have to wash this one away very quickly. We have to sit in this loss, look at the tape, and then get better. We told you what Zach Taylor said. He said, when you turn the ball over 5 times, you're going to get historical issues, and that's what the Bengals faced here this afternoon in Minnesota. They had the worst loss in franchise history, but between the frustration of Chase Brown, who also said, F the people who are going to say what they're going to say, we have to start playing with a chip on our shoulder. Also after the game, there were players on the defensive side who said, we need to play more physical. But Chris Jenkins, he did have a good game. He had a sack and a half in the contest, starting to show some bright spots for the Bengals defense along the defensive line. But really the story of this game was the Bengals not being able to generate anything at the point of attack, not being able to run the ball, and turning the ball over 5 times. Bengals looked overmatched from the very start of this game, and it showed in every which way as Jordan Mason of the Vikings, he was able to run the ball in the end zone twice. He ran for 116 yards on 16 carries. So the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, had no problem exerting their will here on Sunday. The Bengals were in no position whatsoever to match that effort. They get blown out here on Sunday afternoon by a score of 48-10. Again, the worst loss, the worst point differential loss in Bengals franchise history. We've got you covered. All of the reaction up on the X at Trags, Trags. My game recap and takeaways. There were a few injuries of note in this game, namely Samaje Perine leaving with a brace on his right thumb. He did not return. Dalton Reisner suffered a strained right calf, not believed to be too serious, but he didn't play much in the second half at all either. And Noah Fant, he suffered a concussion. He is in concussion protocol and will be day-to-day. But we'll have you covered up on CLNS Cincy with a Y.com, all of my takeaways. And, of course, Skinny and I have the Bengals post-game pod. Will expand upon what the heck happened here at US Bank Stadium. That'll be up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@JungleRoarPod. Again, the final at US Bank Stadium here in downtown Minneapolis. The Bengals get clobbered 48-10 by the Minnesota Vikings. Inside US Bank Stadium, Mike Petraglia, CLNS Media.